Welcome to Ohio's BIOS, an insight into local government here in Ohio. I'm David Thomas and serve as County Auditor for Ashtabula County in Northeast Ohio. Local government impacts each of us every day, but how much do we really know about the organizations and the people who make everyday life possible? Join me as I speak with the leaders in local government making a difference in our communities every day. All right, so my guest for today is Doug Starkey. He's the director for the Ashtabula County Environmental Services. Has quite a resume, background, unique way of getting to this position, and has a great approach with our staff here in Ashtabula County. So Doug, thank you so much for joining me for a little bit here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's get right to it. How did you end up as the director for environmental services?
Well, it was a long road to get here. I started out as a carpenter by trade.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And graduated from Geneva and went to trade school in Cleveland to become a carpenter and finished my journeymanship to do that. So I figured I'd pound nails all my career. Got into the part-time fire service in Geneva and then became full-time in 1990 and moved up to fire chief in 2001, then city manager, and was city manager until September of 2020. I had applied here to come here and got hired by the commissioners to come here. So that's how I ended up here. A long path to get here.
So you were fire chief and city administrator for the City of Geneva.
Yep.
So how are those kind of roles different than what you have now? You answer to people in both positions. Your commissioners right now, you're kind of under them for environmental services, and with council you were under council, or as fire chief you were under the administrator in council.
Yep.
So how are those kind of roles different, the same?
I answered to the city manager as the fire chief. And then when I became city manager, somewhere along the line, someone asked me which one's more difficult to do, more challenging. And I says, well, being the fire chief. And they went, well, why? And I says, well, as fire chief, during an incident, you're making a lot of quick decisions that you believe are right based on your experience and training and everything. Whereas the city manager, and also even in this role as director, typically I can call somebody and say, hey, our sanitary engineer, hey, can you help me? I got a question here. So you got some time typically to look into things a little more detail. So that's a major difference. As far as, I went directly to the city manager's fire chief and directly to, city council appointed me. So that's who hired me there, and then here with the commissioners.
So talk to us about the Ashtabula County Environmental Services. For someone that has no idea, it probably has an idea a little bit. You mentioned a sanitary engineer, but for someone that no clue about what environmental services does, what's kind of the organization in a quick nutshell?
Well, we have 22 employees here, so we're really small as far as number of employees, compared to a lot of places, but we're one of the larger
for the county
departments under the county commissioners.
Yeah.
And we own 5 wastewater treatment plants. We also maintain 2 others, operator of record for Roaming Shores and Rock Creek. We have 80 miles of sewer line, which includes 29 pump stations. And then on the water side, so we do both water. Mostly all of our stuff is in unincorporated areas. Other than Geneva on the Lake, we do this water lines through there. But on the water side, we have 4 water storage tanks, and this one always kind of surprises me. We hold 2.95 million gallons of water.
Wow.
Is what we store, and we're getting ready, hopefully later this year, to go to bid to do another 300,000 gallons of storage, a water tank in the Harpersfield Township area. We have 8 pump stations, 130 miles of water line out there that we take care of. And then we get water in 6 different, potentially we could get water from 6 different directions. So we purchase our water through Aqua.
Okay.
We get some water from Lake County. If there's a problem, we can interconnect. With those interconnections, we can get more water from Lake County if we had to. and then, or I'm sorry, we have 5 interconnects, is what we have. So, and again, we do that with 22 people, which includes our office staff of the ladies here that address people's calls and concerns. You
'Cause you
know,
do billing
we
directly
do the
too.
billing out of here, correct?
How many customers do you think you have?
Well, on the water side, we're a little over 5,000.
Wow.
55. At one time, it was 5516, I believe, was a number I can remember seeing in some paperwork. So, yep. So we get lots of calls. We've made some changes here with being able to do electronic much more. We were doing when people's water, for whatever reason we had to deal with somebody, whether it was lack of payment or there was a reason we needed to shut off water, we'd go out and put a tag on their door and then they get charged for that. So one of the things we've changed is actually, instead of causing them more cost, we're actually sending them electronic notice, and we're sending those much quicker. So they almost get a week versus a day notice to come in and get caught up and stuff. So we found that to be helpful to our customers. I know
That makes sense. Yeah, making some changes here and there.
Yeah.
Just 5,000 is a lot of people.
Yes.
And I know Ashtabula County, we're kind of unique. Infrastructure is typically one of the basics of government, and that people kind of point to as, here's why it exists. But here in our county, what we're probably predominantly well and septic still.
Yes, we have a large area, and we're seeing a big ask of people wanting both water and sewer increase all the time. And a lot of old lines that have been out there for years and years and years, we've noticed a surge in people wanting to tap into them. So, which, when you talk to some of the people that have been around here for a while, they're stunned at the volume of that change. So.
Yeah, and I know I've talked with folks that are confused when they hear that people don't want sewer or they don't want water. What are some of the conversations that you've had with people as to why people may not want to go on the county's program?
Cost obviously is the number one reason, so, versus our tapping fees, but drilling a well, they're up in the $6,000 to $10,000 range. I don't even know a current number, probably maybe more with since COVID and everything went up in price. So, you might be more than that. On the septic side, you're going to spend probably $15,000 plus or minus for a new septic system if you have a lot big enough to even put one on, or if you don't, it triggers different types of septic tanks to meet those demands for smaller lots out there. So, I think people capture what might be a monthly cost and kind of no maintenance because we're supplying the water to you. So obviously, if there's a problem between the right of way at the street and your house, you're still responsible. But your well, if it fails, you don't have water. Unless we have a water main break, you should have water. And from a septic standpoint, here again, just you're not pumping every year. You don't have that. You'll have some initial cost in comparison, but typically not to that level. And then you have your monthly bill. So I think there's some misconceptions of why they don't want it. And overall, at the end of the day, I think, we're providing quality water. And then, your septic, instead of a tank that discharges into maybe the local stream or ditch that's there,
much cleaner.
It's going and getting treated and put in. And we're obviously have EPA oversees both our water and sewer. So
I've been told the water that comes out of a treatment facility is typically cleaner than even like bottled water, for example, or some of
I
the...
don't know about bottled water, but
Okay.
it's often cleaner than the water that you're pulling a source in from. So before treatment starts, often, there's some, we got pretty, and it, our regulations are based on what we put our discharge into. So when you have small streams, they tighten those regulations up even more.
Versus dumping into the lake, for example, or something much bigger.
If we had a discharge into Lake Erie, our requirements and stuff would be higher than what we do for a lot of the tributaries that we dump into now.
That makes sense. So now, you talked about your background and being the executive or being the director. not necessarily having the background of working in the trenches, for example, but overseeing that in the city, what do you think are some of the skills, or what do you think makes a good director, or a good staff member here at Environmental Services?
Well, I think first off, don't do knee-jerk reactions, and don't send an email when you're upset. um, you know, it- and here again, I think talking to people when you're something, isn't going the way you like it, sometimes, the department here is doing things the right way. They've done it from day one, and it's still the best way to do it. So when you want to just come in as a new person and implement change, I'm not a big fan of that. So typically, wait 6 months, ask questions, see how it's going, and then constantly after that, don't just jump to conclusions. We had a question today actually come in. Somebody called about our new rates and was questioning something, and I says, I don't have that answer. Let me do some research. So I actually met with a couple of people, and I think hopefully this afternoon I can get back to them with the facts about his question. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially because you're kind of serving two different groups. The commissioners, your department heads, but then also the customers
oh,
and
absolutely.
taxpayers.
Yeah.
So you got both sides of
Yep.
kind of taking in different concerns or questions, issues.
Yep, and I think how we deal with those here, if they don't like our answer, they're going to go to the commissioners, which, the commissioners are great with taking those, and then they're going to reach out and say, Doug, what's going on with this? But, you hope that, you reply with the facts and details that, they accept the answer that you give them. So,
Yeah. And speaking of rates, so how exactly are you funded as a department for water and sewer?
okay, well, first off, we get no general fund dollars from the county. So we're
That's
funded,
important.
we are what's considered a proprietary fund. So we have a water proprietary and a sewer proprietary fund. So ours is simple. It's based on ratepayers. So the ratepayers pay our cost. Now, do we get revenue from grants? Absolutely. Do we get low interest loans, sometimes 0% loans? Absolutely. So, we're constantly in pursuit of grants to reduce what we may need to ask our ratepayers. For instance, the new rate increase, we had RCAP came in and did a study of us and had a suggestion of, 40 and 50% rate increases, which, myself, I had a little concern with passing that along.
Right.
And they justified when I started checking into their study and what they found and what they utilized. I mean, they were basing it on facts, and and kudos to the commissioners, because that was unacceptable to them to pass along to the ratepayers. So we worked through many different templates to get to the point we are now. So.
So with all those different kind of revenue streams coming in, I know probably some of your challenges that you're looking on down the road are staffing. I always hear concerns over limited supply of folks that actually have the education background. And then we probably have an older kind of stock of pipes and infrastructure in the county, and just how to upkeep that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, we have, we have water license that are required. We have both, and sewer license that are required. And, we operate on the sewer side. We have what's called Class 2 plants. So you have to have a Class 2 operator doing those plants. Well, here again, when we actually got openings right now. So any of your listeners that know somebody, we're looking for operator 1 or an operator 2.
Sounds like almost everyone has openings with those.
And it's a challenge. And here again, the great, you take from one jurisdiction, so now they're short. Well, then somebody else offers better, and they're gone from you. So there's been a big turnover, and people kind of moving around a lot lately. So it is a challenge with getting people and maintaining people. You hope you offer a good package, a good atmosphere, that people want to stay here and for years to come, because there will be turnover. It's like any department. You have turnover. As far as the age of our infrastructure, it's a constant. So is it a sewer line that was done how many years ago out of clay tile that's needs lining? Is it All those things weigh into it. Here again, a new water tower to meet needs. Well, that changes pressures and flows, and so how does that interact with our existing system? So, one of the things we did with our rate increase is the system improvement fee, which doesn't go up in price as the rates do each year, but it'll stay a constant during the rate. But it's specifically driven to put that money, without batting an eye, back into improving the system and upgrading pipes that need to be addressed. I mean, if you drive on Route 307 close by here from like Hickok into Jefferson, and you're heading, that direction into Jefferson, you're going to have many dips with your car. Well, those are ours. We claim those. And that line is scheduled to get replaced. We're in the design stage of it right now. We got an OPWC grant and loan to upgrade that line. So that's an ongoing constant of us, is to stay on top of meeting the demands, the needs, the expansion. But the problem with water and sewer, for a lot of people, they're not pretty. They're underground, they're hidden. You don't think about them until there's a main break or a sewer collapse, those kind of things. So they're not typically in the forefront of people's minds. So that's a challenge of staying on top of this stuff, because you can get behind in a hurry.
I'm sure, especially with how big our county is.
Yeah.
And all the different jurisdictions that you kind of work with and different pieces. I know, I'm sure you even compare like the Rock Creek facility, for example, versus the Geneva on the Lake facility.
Yep.
And the difference is there, I think, Rock Creek was built in the 80s.
Yeah, and I think they're working towards doing an upgrade. And that's one of the other challenges I think that we have, is the EPA mandates. They're evolving all the time, and they come in and they do an inspection of us for our permits, and they say, you need to address these issues. And so, and sometimes it's things that maybe you should have caught, like one was we had from our water survey from the EPA was we had some fence damage. So we're getting some fencing repairs done, those kind of things. Some are simple and some are much more complex.
I'm sure. Now, with your kind of unique background, seeing different levels of government, what do you think is the purpose of government?
One person makes a difference, can make a difference, is really many years ago at a international Chiefs conference, I actually took a seminar on one person makes a difference. And, they talk, people tell us all the time we should run like a business. And, I think in aspects, and especially your field, in the financial field, I mean, there's aspects of that. The challenge is if one person came to McDonald's, say, and said, I don't want you to have a pickle on your burger anymore, chances are McDonald's not taking the pickle off. If that same person showed up at every county commissioners meeting, every local government meeting, and chirped about something, whatever it is, whatever the issue may be, at some point, it's going to get looked into. It's going to be, weighed, whether there's pros and cons to it. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits that government brings to the table, is one person can make a difference, and accountability. Here again, we're charging, a fair amount for our rates here, and we should be able to justify that, and we should be able to show that. And I think, versus a private company where they don't have to show that. They don't have to show was their profits. We can say, hey, here's our funds, here's our carryovers, here's what we have. And I think that's, to people's benefit to see that, and it justifies, what you have or don't have.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have said too, the idea of charging for water, for example, is something that is kind of, if you take a step back and think, well, why would we charge for water? But I think you just shared all those different pieces. They go into it. How else would you actually supply this basic need?
Right. And we're not, we don't make water, so we're buying from Aqua, who obviously they're charging residents and to make that. They just did a huge upgrade at the plant. So, that cost here again has to get passed along. Now they deal with the PUCO. We don't deal with the PUCO because we're a government entity.
Interesting. So they have different, of course, Aqua being a private company, they also have different kind of focuses or priorities too. But I'm sure you all work really well
Oh, we do.
together.
We actually worked very good together. Last year, we started doing a flushing together with all the entities that are involved in the system. So Geneva, Rock Creek, all of them, and we worked together and we flushed kind of starting at the plant. We worked with Aqua and we moved the water through the system like it truly should be. So they're already scheduled a meeting for this year to redo it the same way again because it worked so well last year. Really, I think it was a huge benefit for all of us.
That's nice, working together and kind of focusing on those things.
Yeah.
And I know one of your big things coming in was having plans for the future, and trying to map out different pieces for the county. And I think you've mentioned like a 5-year plan that you're working on.
Yeah, we changed here to a 5-year budget. Internally, that's what we do. And I think that's what concerned me really out of the gate of where our rates were. On paper, it didn't look that bad on an annual basis. And then all of a sudden, when you knew what you needed to accomplish, or even some of what you needed to accomplish, the financial numbers weren't looking good at all anymore. And that's when we reached out to RCAP and they did the study for the county. So really look down the road at 5 years is I'd love to expand it out to 10 eventually, but for right now we're at 5 and trying to, equipment wise, what needs are there. Our staff's trucks, that's their toolbox. And that's how they respond. That's where they need, we need to make sure they're taken care of well with the fleet that we have, along with our trailers, crane trucks for pulling pumps, all those kind of things that come into play. So, besides the obvious that you have to do to repair stuff at a plant or a water line that breaks, those kind of things, is, kind of all that spin-off stuff that makes us function on a solid basis.
Lots of different inputs in for your expenses and things that probably aren't looking to go down anytime soon either.
No, and the price of pipe is, outrageous right now, which impacts any bid that we do or, those kind of things. So, when you're looking at, here again, when we first started with the 5-year budget, if you set aside, say, $100,000 for some new pipes, well, that went a distance. Now not so far,
Right.
And so each year, that's why we update, our 5-year budget, what's our potential projects, and it helps us pursue what grants, opportunities are out there, start laying some groundwork for things that we can capture some funds from.
Are you seeing a lot more grants that we can utilize, or are they decreasing and the government's focusing on other areas of infrastructure?
Well, I think you're seeing differences to the grants. For instance, the Appalachian Regional Commission grant, the ARC grant. We've been very successful over the years in getting that grant. Well, one of the things that they require now is the PTI, the permit to install. So where you used to be able to put in, get the full application, be approved, and then you started kind of working through the process. One of the changes we're doing now is starting to address getting a lot of design work done so we can get the permit to install from the EPA. And then when we apply, like them, if you can't do the full application until you have your PTI permit from the EPA, or you lose the funds. So I'm seeing a change. I think highly competitive, as they always were, but I think everybody's infrastructure. It's not just the counties. I mean, everybody's infrastructure. You look back at when some of these systems were put in and, those, everybody's infrastructure is in need of a constant upgrade.
Right.
And
we're not even talking bridges and, and roads and different things. This is the basic stuff of water and sewer.
Here again, we're underground, and I think, on ARPA funds, when they first came out, they were driving it that was going to be infrastructure.
We were pointing everyone towards that.
It was going to be infrastructure. Well, then the rules of engagement changed, and, then it turned out to be quite a variety of things that communities could pick that was in their best interest. So, here again, what I was hoping for was all those dollars that come in, hot dang, we're going to be able to put it into our system. And it just, at the end of the day, they allowed some other rules, which rightfully so. I think the communities kind of expressed, hey, we're not just hurting in infrastructure, we're hurting in all kinds of different areas. So I think that's why they helped allow some of that flexibility in it.
Right. Even some of the townships using it for infrastructure, but roads or
Right.
for ditches versus.
Yep.
We tried to steer people your way. I think a couple
You did.
entities did.
Yeah, we did. We did have a few in the county that have done it. So
Yep.
no.
Once in a lifetime, money that you can use to, because you can't. I remember living in North Kingsville. Everything's on septic.
Yep.
And you can't build condos or you can't build large structures financially feasibly with septic systems.
Right.
And so how do you push for development without having the basic infrastructure?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So what now in terms of looking kind of at other levels of government? What if you could tell us something, or if you could share something with levels of government above us? Is that state, district, federal? What would be some kind of lessons or some thoughts that you would want to share with them to say, hey, think about this from my experience here?
Well, and I think I'll start locally here. So the county commissioners and Janet, our county administrator, the one thing that's refreshing to me is I think they know what's going on and they listen and they're very engaged and active, and they get it, I guess, for for lack of a better way to put it. And I think that's been refreshing to me of the help make us successful, because they see the need and the demands and the expectations of our customers. So, that's in place. And I think they've worked diligently at the state level to try to get funds and try to get things involved. We've got a thing in with the state now in their budget for a sewer project potentially. Mm-hmm. And then we actually got a sewer and a water project, hopefully been sent by Congressman Joyce and Senator Brown, have both sent 2 projects on from us to the Appropriations Committee. Now, where any of these end up, you've been around in government a long time, you think you're right in line, and the next thing you're not getting anything. So we're optimistic. We hope that some of these bear fruit, but and I think here again, I think the commissioners, their involvement at the state level and federal level have helped open up some of those opportunities for our county.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that communication aspect of just sharing.
Yes.
What is it like? Yeah, I know the project there in Kingsville.
Yep.
Will be huge, and that's an example where we couldn't do it, here on our own. Working with them on what would it actually cost, and how much would you have to assess on each property owner.
Yeah, it's just not practical to those customers to say, well, we can do it if we assess the project, and here's your number, and it's like you watch them scatter at that point, because truly it's a huge number. So here again, we're hoping some of these projects bear fruit, and a lot of people have worked hard. Their grassroots efforts from the Kingsville citizens and stuff that I think have helped move that project potentially along. So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share about your background, the department here. I think the important things, like you said, of you're in the ground and you're not necessarily being seen, but you guys are being felt every day by the needs of what we have.
When we shut the water off, we get people's attention. So
I'm sure that's a great.
We have a water line break that you get phone calls. So
you guys ever get bored here? You can just turn off the water somewhere and then
watch the phone ring.
Well, thank you again,
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
All right, awesome. Thank you.